Hello, and welcome to the first edition of Villanova Tip Time, a Villanova basketball pregame show. It's November 25th, 2020. We have our first game of the night, first game of the year, playing Boston College in the Empire 2K Classic at a Mohegan Sun, which is actually still going on. Looks like we have about 6 or so minutes left in the game there, and then expect, probably a 20-minute or so break between games. So I'm guessing scheduled tip-off is probably going to get pushed back a little bit. So I'm guessing we're probably going to end up with somewhere between, I'm thinking right around 9:45 Eastern, which for those of you on the East Coast is probably a not-so-welcome treat that you've had to wait all day for this really exciting slate of college basketball games. And we have Nova tipping off probably somewhere closer to 10 o'clock now at this point. So it's been an exciting day. It's been a roller coaster of a couple of weeks and months leading up here to the beginning of the season. And we're often quick to forget that we are coming off of a canceled March Madness. Like, we don't have a reigning champion. I guess you theoretically could, just like we were talking about Tiger being the reigning Masters champs for a year and a half, maybe does that make UVA kind of the reigning champ? I think speaking of UVA, they absolutely clobbered Towson in their first game, and sort of that open eyes emoji when you see them hanging close to 90 points. Obviously known for their defense now and having invested in their half of the Hauser brothers, to see them hang 90 out of the gate. It's first game, obviously not a terribly formidable opponent, but that could be trouble with Virginia sitting at number 4. But let's talk Cats. Let's get into the Cats here. I think for the pregame show, one of the reasons that we're doing this is because, as many of you know, or many of you that watch every Villanova game, very rarely do you get a pregame show, especially if it's on Fox Sports 1 during the week. Generally, you're going right from, I think, their daily NASCAR update show right into tip-off, right? And then if you're a major network televised game on a weekend, or sometimes during the week on ESPN, sure, you'll get a pregame show, but it's sort of generic to college basketball. There's nothing really super, Cats specific. So for me, it'd been an itch I'd been wanting to scratch for quite some time in getting a Villanova pregame show started for the Villanova fan that watches every game and wants to get a little bit of warm up, a little bit of shop talk before we actually, get right to tip off. So for today, I think with a little bit longer to chat, got a couple of topics queued up. I think number one, I want to break down this Nova squad. Really excited about how deep this team is, and we'll get into that a little bit. I think we're going to talk a little bit about the Empire Classic and this tournament that we're playing in tonight and tomorrow at Mohegan Sun, and some of the change we've seen there, as well as just sort of the overall college basketball landscape evolving with, the shape of the world over the last 6 to 8 months. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Big East, kind of how things are shaping up there. And then we'll get into the matchup. We got Boston College coming in tonight. Not originally supposed to be part of this tournament. This was a fill-in. And they are obviously playing out of the ACC, a former Big East foe of Villanova. And they're projected, most projections sort of have them in that bottom tier of the ACC. They do have a formidable backcourt coming back to their team. We'll get into that in a little bit. So let's get right into the team. I think so Jay announced formally that you're going to have 4 starters. So 4 starting spots locked, and then I think that 5th spot is kind of wide open, and the rotation is going to be pretty deep. So number 1, you have Colin Gillespie. He's been on the cover of every sort of magazine / Twitter thumbnail. When we talk about, Gonzaga 1, Baylor 2, Nova 3, Colin Gillespie's been, in the lion's share of those pictures representing Villanova. We'll see a little bit of Jeremiah Robinson Earl too. Those 2 guys are easily the 2 most talked about players coming back, with Colin sort of taking on that role as the senior, as the team leader. And for fans or division foes, in other Big East schools, they joked that Arcidiacono felt like he was with the program for a decade, right? And then that transitioned right into Colin G, where even though their games aren't necessarily overly similar, they're, just the appearance, Colin Gillespie gives off that vibe of the guy that's just been around forever. And, good for him. He's getting into all the conversation around, preseason player of the year, preseason, second team All-American, these, crazy kind of accolades that I think, 3 or 4 years ago he could have only dreamed of. And it's a testament to him and the hard work. It's a testament also to Jay's program and the ability to really coach up. Oh, looks like we got some mailbag coming in on the mailbag coming in. Tim from Astoria. Do you think the Arizona State URI game will go to OT? If so, how do you plan to stop that? So interesting. I really hope it doesn't go to OT. I'm probably just going to talk through my topics and then cut it because I'm expecting no more than 5 viewers tonight, being our soft launch. If this was a real world scenario, so say Monday after I start publicizing this show, I would pull some sort of a Buffalo Wild Wings move and make sure that somebody committed a technical foul or something to give an untimed free throw to end the game right there. It's probably a good answer, right, Tim? Getting back into the roster, though. So we've got Colin G and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, two guys we're all really excited about. Justin Moore is kind of that breakout candidate, I think. Almost feels similar to where Sadiq Bey was a year ago. We're coming into the team, coming off of a strong prior season, expecting to be one of the leaders, expecting to be that guy that takes the next step. Obviously, Sadiq Bey drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, so he did pretty well making that next step, making that next leap and having an awesome season and being that dominant player. And then number 4, last but certainly not least, senior Jermaine Samuels, rounding out that kind of locked in starting 4, and that 5th spot is wide open. I think we're expecting Swider to get that 5th spot tonight, and I think you might start to see that as a little bit of a trend because with this Cats team, the story tales old as time. Stop me if you've heard this before, but with this Cats team, I think size is going to probably be the issue, right? And so Swider sort of being the tallest of the remaining guys on the bench, I think is going to just get him a lot of burn. In addition to the fact that he's looked pretty consistently good through his career at Nova, and he's that guy going from sophomore to junior season now that can really take that jump as well. So I think you're going to see him get a lot of burn. Talking about sort of the next level of guys that you're going to see rotating into that 5th spot or being the 6th man off the bench, I think you have Caleb Daniels, transfer from Tulane. He sat out last season as a redshirt as a requirement of his transfer. And, this is a guy who's used to being like the spotlight of his team, the 18 points a night baller. So it's going to be surprising to see how he adjusts to this new role working into Jay's system where he's not necessarily going to be the go-to guy. Maybe better off for Nova Nation, though, if he does start to be that guy, maybe he could be your surprise locked-in 5th starter, although obviously with that, then you're going with a hardcore, more small ball lineup if Caleb Daniels ends up with your 5th starter spot. Guy that's getting a lot of buzz lately, too, is coming off of a redshirt year is Eric Dixon. Read a couple things in recent days saying, don't be surprised if you see Eric Dixon work his way into the starting lineup. Now, I don't know if that would be like in competition with Justin Moore or if you're planning on him being the 5th with that sort of locked-in 4 starters that I talked about. But really interesting to see, I think, for most Cats fans that haven't really seen Eric Dixon, play a whole lot. They haven't really watched him on tape. They haven't seen him play in games. So that's one name you hear that you're excited about because you're like, holy crap, how deep is this team? And then finally, almost forgotten but not forgotten is Brandon Slater, who, again, I think between that, this sort of second tier, right, past your locked-in starters, it's a guy that a lot of people look over, but is also a perfectly capable, 6th or 7th man, especially if you're not relying on him as a starter, you're relying on him off the bench, sort of on the deeper side of your bench. Like, that's a pretty good problem to have. And not suiting up tonight, we have Demir Cosby-Roundtree, who has been a starter for this program. I think you're going to see him get a lot of burn if and when JRE goes into foul trouble. Not suiting up tonight, unclear as to how long this injury is going to linger. Obviously, you never like to see it with a guy who's made it through this program. Like, he's a national champion. He's been a major contributor to the program over the last several years, and now he's taking on a more limited role. So Be interesting to see him do that, but he also seems like the kind of guy that's poised to sort of bring that leadership and almost like a player coach mentality, which would be really interesting to see. And then, Brian Anton. You just got to feel for the guy, right? He was coming in, last season as a freshman, and people were talking about him as a one and done guy, as like one of the the better blue chips that Jay had brought in. And, injury plagued freshman season with a shoulder. And word gets out a couple weeks ago that he's back down with a different injury to the same shoulder. So we don't know how serious it is. Obviously, we're hoping for the best. We're hoping we get him back real soon. But without Dada, as I like to call Demir Cosby-Roundtree, without Brian Anton, you're looking at an 8-deep rotation. Like, you barely have a bench mob anymore. And we're not even going to get into the recruiting class coming in next year and all the wacky possible scenarios that go on with potentially extending eligibility, depending on how crazy things get with the pandemic in this season. But this team is stacked, and they're going to continue to be stacked because even though they have a couple of seniors on this year's roster that they expect to graduate, they're filling that with a loaded freshman class coming in next year. Boy, it's been a hell of a year for college basketball. Obviously, if you think back to the beginning of March, we were like, how is it possible that they would cancel the NCAA tournament? It's not possible. And then they did. And then all summer, you see that the NBA really crushed it with the bubble concept. You see Major League Baseball had their stops and starts. You see college football's had a heck of a time. Depending on who you root for and where you're located in the country, some hard, worse than others, as far as the impact to the football schedule, but still pretty rocky road. And already basketball's had a ton of cancellations and a ton of moving and shifting. I was reading something online that it's almost going to be like, old school AAU, where like you guys are just showing up to the gym and claiming next in some of these early season tournaments. Because if you look at all the shuffling that's going on and adding of the regional players, and that's evidenced pretty widely by, what we're seeing here with the Empire Classic, which was originally supposed to be in Madison Square Garden, most famous arena on earth, and was moved out to Mohegan Sun, which is great if you wanted to get a couple games of blackjack in, but we're in a pandemic and we're not going to casinos, hopefully. So, moving out to Mohegan Sun and then replacing the original field, which was going to be Villanova, Baylor, Michigan, and who am I forgetting the fourth? NC State, right? And one by one, they're dropping like flies, and now Villanova is the only one left. So, pretty crazy. You have Arizona State and Rhode Island going on right now, Rhode Island being the very late ad for Baylor dropping out, somewhere between 24 and 48 hours ago. And then Boston College being the new opponent for Villanova in the later game, which was, I think, supposed to originally be the earlier game. So a lot of moving and shaking, teams, times, the whole 9 yards. But we're getting a pretty interesting game. And this Arizona State team looked like they were going to walk with it at halftime. And then in the second half, as I've been kind of paying attention here, they're hanging on to a tight lead with a little bit of time left. But URI showed up, which is, great for the participants of this classic, that they didn't just show up and be a rollover team. They showed up. They're giving number 18 Arizona State a run for their money. And being a little bit of a homer, I'm hoping we don't see that in the Villanova game. So let's talk a little bit about the Big East breakdown. Villanova's kind of in I think, a cut above, a league of their own. And that's a little bit of a bias. So maybe you throw, I think, Creighton in there, as Creighton's a team you see in a lot of consensus, Final Four contender conversation, right? I don't actually fear the matchup as much for Villanova with Creighton as I do with UConn, crazy enough. One, because of the size. I think two, because I think they're going to get a little shot of life from being back in the Big East for the first time. They're a little bit more of a wild card. But I think you see them competing for the Big East. Potentially, if they can get their stuff figured out, you're going to see them not only contending for the Big East, but you're going to see them give some of the better teams a run for their money on their best nights. Seton Hall will be up there as well. I expect Seton Hall to finish somewhere in the 4 slot in the conference if we get to see a normal conference season play out. Losing a lot, obviously, in some of their senior leaders, but returning plenty and bringing in some good new talent as well. And then I think you have Providence sort of rounding out the sort of the top of that middle tier. And then you sort of get into the Peloton, not sure. With sort of Xavier, Marquette, Butler. I think DePaul looks as one of the best guys in the conference, best individual contributors in the conference coming back. So I think they might not be as bottom basement as they've been, in recent years. It's showing a little bit more life in the conference, especially in a conference heavy schedule. And then in the basement, you're looking at St. John's, which I don't have an eye on that score, but I know they were having a tough time with St. Peter's, which is not a great look for the conference. And then Georgetown, which, lost a lot in Mac McClung transferring out, and just doesn't look like they're going to be super competitive in the Big East. So you kind of have a tale of two halves here. You look at the Big East, and you can kind of slot groups into different tiers pretty easily, at least to start. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out with teams potentially stopping and starting because of COVID. Will really impact how teams gel together. Obviously for a program like Jay's at Villanova, it's going to, impact how sharp the defense is and whether they can really, get those reps in with that switch defense. And yeah, I think all bets are off for this season, right? You're just hoping to get as many games in as you can, make sure we're hopefully being as safe as possible and mitigating any major outbreaks. And then ultimately too, just get to March Madness. We just want to have a tournament. I personally am in favor of a possible college basketball bubble concept. I think we'll get more into that down the line. But yeah, I think we're ready to see some action here. So let's get into tonight's game. Like I said, Boston College coming in, a late add to this tournament. Oddly enough, not the latest ad, with URI taking the last spot here within the last couple of days. But Boston College not given a lot of love in most ACC predictions, sort of expected to be sort of in that, like I said earlier, in that bottom third. So honestly, I think the spread tonight, which is Villanova favored by 14, is an absolute gift of a line. If you're interested in putting a little money on the game, I think Villanova is your best bet at minus 14, because I think it's just sort of a friendly, nobody really knows what's going on line. And I think if I don't know on which side of the fence you sit with the concept of an emotional hedge when it comes to betting, but I think if tonight's game is any closer than 14 points with Boston College, I think objectively most Villanova fans would be fairly disappointed with high hopes coming in. So BC is, the couple guys to look out for are interesting stat. The most statistically productive returning player in the ACC is Stephon Mitchell. So something to look out for there with BC. Also, you're looking at a really good backcourt with Makai Ashton-Langford coming over from Providence and Winston Tubbs returning for BC, giving them a formidable backcourt. So I think even though I think most objective coverage, sees them in the bottom tier of the ACC, they have a good backcourt, and I think they're at least a mediocre team. So if they throw the Cats a big punch, the Cats better be ready to take the punch and punch right back. So we'd like to see a hot start for Nova tonight, and we want to see them obviously get going on offense and put up a lot of points. As such, the over-under is around 143 at last I checked. So I think you want to go over there because nobody wants to root for the under on opening night. And of course, if you're here, it means you're probably a Villanova fan. And if you're a Villanova fan, you're hoping to see them put up some big points. And therefore, let us root for the over. All right, we're going to go to the mailbag here. So we're going to go to our Q&A. How deep is Nova this year compared to last? Ooh, good question. I mean, deeper, I think, because you have all of your important contributors returning. Obviously, you lost Sadiq Bey to the draft, which is a bummer. But you're getting a lot of hype out of somebody like I said earlier, like an Eric Dixon. You're going to see an enhanced role from Cole Swider getting a little bit more minutes, and then Caleb Daniels, who I think is just an absolute stud in the making, who could potentially help relieve some of the pressure on Colin G in the backcourt. So, and really take over a game. One thing that we look for with Nova teams that are this deep and this many guys in the rotation is, yes, it's great to have guys that can step up on a given night and take a game over. But I think Nova's problem in the past has sometimes been when you have the off night where nobody can really step up. And that's what I love most about Caleb Daniels is he seems like the kind of guy you put in there and he's gonna be able to take the rock and bring it to the rack. And he's going to be able to sort of take control of the game, which is an amazing thing to have out of a bench player at this point, which is pretty crazy. So let's go to the mailbag. Who will settle in as Nova's fifth starter? Like I said earlier, we kind of covered this topic a little bit. I think size is going to be a factor here, and that's why I think you're going to see Swider out of the gate a little bit more because he's kind of the tallest of the non-starters that are competing for this fifth spot. And then I think Caleb Daniels is going to be an immediate sort of competition for that playing time as well. But the one that I'm hearing most, which isn't an original opinion of mine, but I've just been seeing Eric Dixon come up more and more. And so that's a storyline I'm really interested in following, just being someone that we haven't seen a lot from. Just, excited to see what the kid's got. And yeah. Next question. What happens if JRE gets into foul trouble? Well, as I mentioned briefly earlier, that would be no good. I mean, Jerry's going to be your double candidate every night, which is amazing. But if he gets in foul trouble, a team that's already playing a little smaller is going to get a lot smaller. Now, granted, he's not crazy big. He plays big because he plays long. But without him, you're looking at a lot of guys like sub 6'7", sub 6'8". And if you happen to be playing a team with a lot of size, you're going to have to really grind on the boards. Otherwise, you might be able to let some teams that are significantly less talented hang in just with some significant rebounding advantages. Sorry about that. I think I had a little freeze glitch. So it looks like we are in the moments leading up to tip-off here as I keep my eye on the screen airing ESPN. Looks like that game has gone final, which is fantastic. Really excited for this Cats season. We're hoping that we can get the W here tonight. We'll be on another late game tomorrow night if we are so able. And with that, I think we're going to call it the end of the initial Villanova Tip Time pregame show. Thank you all for bearing with me. My test subjects. I want to say I texted this link to exactly 6 people. It looks like at one point, all 6 of them, I had 6 attendees, so I appreciate everybody tuning in. I talked a lot. It's a little interesting as sort of a solo act. I don't know how long that's going to go on. I definitely have some close friends that I would love to get involved and love to have be regular parts of this. I think it would sort of create a little bit more back and forth and not make me have to just talk. Although I mostly went through my points there and we, got through about 23 minutes, pretty uninterrupted. So feeling pretty good about where we're at with the show. I really love doing this. I really love putting it on. So I think we'll for sure certainly be back tomorrow night. We'll break down what we saw from the Cats tonight. So I'm going to go get something to drink. Going to get in the saddle. I'm going to break down the game, and excited for Cats basketball to be back. Like I said, look for Nova to cover the 14-point spread tonight. We're going to root for the over. I don't know that I have a strong lean on over/under, but we're going to root for the over because it's no fun to root for the under on opening night. So Cats by 14. Let's go Cats. In Jay we trust. Have a blessed evening.